Good morning, and thanks for attending this presentation. My name is Diego Kozolic. I'm a consulting chemist, and I have a degree in chemical engineering. I have been working as an analyst in chemical laboratories, testing bunker samples, petroleum products samples in general, and vegetable oils. I have worked also as a cargo surveyor, bunker surveyor, and superintendent in charge of oil blending operations on board ships. And in the last 10 years, I focused on bunker quality disputes. So today we'll discuss about the new fuels, particularly biofuels, methanol, LNG, and ammonia. Now, when it comes to biofuels, and these are the easiest transition for the industry, they are so-called drop-in fuels. So ships, engines, and crew, they are already there for the most part. Now, they behave mostly as existing MFO and MGO. The risks associated with this particular type of new fuels is mostly related to prolonged storages. And these are because of the bio component. So it basically spoils rather quickly. So you want to avoid prolonged storages because this carries the risk of microbial growth, carries the risk of formation of deposits and ultimately corrosion of the bunker tanks. Now, there are also risks when it comes to solving and confronting a quality dispute because the specifications are not there yet. And also when the new ISO 8217 will come up, they will not really address what is the reality of the current biofuels. Because they will address mostly the presence of FAME and the current biofuels. They're made of a lot of other biomaterials. Now, methanol instead, I mean, you can see the combustion formula. It is not really a carbon-free product, so the only way to make it renewable is to produce methanol in a renewable way. So basically you're taking carbon from the atmosphere and putting it back while burning it. So methanol is a clear, colorless and flammable liquid which is soluble in water. So the risks associated with this cargo are mostly related to its flammability. We are going to see now a short video, and this is particularly interesting because methanol behaves differently from any other type of fuel in the sense that its flames are mostly invisible, and this carries a lot of concern because one thing is fighting a fire you can see, and another matter is fighting against a fire that you cannot see. So I'll show you this video, which is 30 years old. It's a race in the US. Cars were fueled with methanol, and they had a leakage while refueling. So you can see the panic because people really can't see where the fire is.
We got a fire there. You can't see it. It's an alcohol fire. Look at people fleeing in every direction. Trying to get out of his car. He just came into the pit.
So the driver is actually on fire now.
There. See him waving his hand. There's Mears. He's got the flamethrower driving suit on. There's a mechanic who's really on fire. He's on fire himself. He's on fire. He's on fire. He's still not getting that man. The mechanic's still on fire.
So, yeah. Sorry for the strong images, but this is to give you an idea of the risks of a real-life scenario. And I've been working in laboratories for many years, and I'm a big believer of real-life scenarios. So as we said, the risks of methanol, of course, related to its flammability. So you will have to have on board a nitrogen padding to remove any contact with oxygen, which means having nitrogen plant, LEL detection system, and thermal cameras everywhere because flames are invisible, so you will have to have a way to assess that. Now, when it comes to pollution, I mean, at least there is a good news. Pollution is a much lower problem, much lower concern, because it's biodegradable. So if you have a leakage of methanol, it basically disappears rather quickly in water. Problems is also with corrosion. Instead, methanol undergoes a chemical process called the stress corrosion cracking, which means that the bunker tanks containing methanol will have to be inspected very often, and much more than what bunker tanks are currently being inspected with residual fuels. So this means stoppages and inspections. Now, apologies, must be, yes. Now, LNG instead is different type of product because it's a gas. So LNG is an invisible and odorless gas, typically made of mostly methane. So you can see the combustion formula is only for methane, but there are small amounts of other gases. So what happens here is that, again, is not carbon-free. So combustion still leads to the formation of CO2. So the only way to make this renewable is to produce CH4 in a renewable way. So again, you're taking carbon from the atmosphere and putting it back through the combustion. Now, the problems with LNG, as we said, is a gas. So as every gas, it takes up a lot of space. So the way to make it, to shrink it, is to carry it in cryogenic condition, minus 162 degrees centigrade. And by doing this, you shrink it to a 1/600th of the volume. But even doing so, you can see the specific energy there. Even in carriage condition, it's just 60% its specific energy as compared to current MGO. So you have to consider the size of your bunker tanks. I mean, they have to be almost double, or otherwise you will have to stop twice as much for bunkering operations. And the size of the bunker tanks having to be so much bigger, they carry a risk, particularly whenever a collision or other problems arise. Now, I'll show you another video now related to the properties of LNG, and I want to show you how strong LNG is whenever you have a failure in the cryogenic conditions. Let me. Yeah. So you have a leakage, and the first thing that everyone tries to do usually is just try to physically contain it, which is absolutely impossible. LNG is way too strong to deal it manually. So the only thing you have to do is you just run away. And the problem with LNG, which is what makes it so desirable, is that it burns really, really well and really, really fast. Right. So risks associated with LNG, we said, is the storage. So it needs to be kept in cryogenic state, and this carries the risk of malfunctioning of the cryogenic plant, which means that the only way to deal with it is just releasing it in the air. And this comes at the risk of flammability while you release it, but particularly what happens if you have a failure in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, far away from anything, and you just have to release it. And you go on releasing it until your ship remains without any fuel. Now, fire, discussed about it, pollution. This is, at least from the marine point of view, from the sea point of view, it's less concerning because, I mean, it is a gas. So immediately you would have a leakage at sea, you would have a pool of LNG. And even in cryogenic condition, the density of LNG is lower than the density of water. So it would continue float, and it would transform quite quickly into gas and disperse in the air. Now, interestingly enough, when you see a white cloud of LNG spillage, you're not really looking at the LNG, but you are looking at the condensation of the humidity in the air surrounding the LNG. So you will see white cloud only for a period of time in which it remains very cold and then will disappear. Now, passing to ammonia. This, of course, has a big concern, which is its toxicity. Now, ammonia is a gas, and you see here the combustion formula. This is the only product that is actually carbon-free, which looks fantastic. The problem is that in order to get to NH3, nowadays we use a lot of carbon. So you get to a point in which you don't have carbon, but you're using a lot to get there. So what the industry is aiming for is to try and produce ammonia in a renewable way, which means a green ammonia. Unfortunately, as of today, the amount of green ammonia is still very limited compared to the other type of ammonia. So risks related to ammonia. Oh, and by the way, what you see here is the specific energy. Again, something to keep in consideration, because ammonia doesn't really burn very well and has a very low specific energy. So again, the size of your tanks, I mean, in this case, should be 3 times the size of current bunker tanks, or otherwise you will have to basically stop 3 times as much to do bunkering operation. And then again, I mean, it's an increased amount of operation you have to do through the year, which comes with additional risks. Now, storage, as we said, I mean, this is a gas that is extremely toxic, so you can't really go about it in case of a containment failure in the way you do with LNG. You can't just release it in the atmosphere. So you have to have a second compartmentalization so that you make sure you will not release it in the atmosphere. I mean, you can imagine what happens in case of the crew being there, or port personnel, or if the vessel is nearby a town or so. So fire instead, not a big problem, because ammonia burns really, really badly. So imagine that in order to start burning it, you have to consume a little bit of gas oil just to make it so that it starts burning. So it's not really a concern here. Now, pollution is mostly a matter of its toxicity. Whereas corrosion, I mean, similar as with methanol, stress corrosion cracking is something that can take place in bunker tanks, and combined with its toxicity, you can imagine the risk. So again, bunker tanks will have to be inspected very, very often. At least at regular intervals, which is not something that is being done currently with residual fuels. Now, we've been discussing about the new fuels as they're like new and scary, but I mean, to be frank, it's not that the current ones are that great. So we've been looking at MGO and MFO as relatively safe for many years, and this, I mean, of course, not discussing about the pollution, but they've been seeing it rather safe. Whereas in the last few years, what happened is that we've had a lot of chemical contaminations in bunkers, which, by the way, kept me very busy for the last few years. And so it has changed the way we look at these fuels. So you can see here on the right side, this is a case I consulted on, and there's a case in which the vessel received the bunker in Panama, and when she started using it in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the engine shut down immediately. The vessel ran aground in an atoll in French Polynesia, and it had to be towed to Papeete and then to South Korea. You can imagine the cost associated with this. They had to change several parts of the engine. So I mean, it's not that the current fuels are that great either. So the conclusions, and I see it's blinking away there. The conclusions is that the usage of the new bunkers is far from impossible. It's just more complicated. And crew will have to be highly trained in particularly handling this kind of products. The attitude towards the bunkering operation will have to change because nowadays there's they're taken in a kind of an easy way because the products are not under pressure, the products are not very flammable, so the attitude towards bunkering operation nowadays is in a way a bit relaxed. So this really has to change. One way to do this is changing the role of the bunker quantity surveyor. In my opinion, the bunker quantity surveyor, which has served the industry very well for the last 20 years or so, will have to change and become the bunker quantity and safety surveyor. So we'll have to add one S there. And this will have to be licensed and trained, particularly in handling each kind, a single kind of bunker. So, in conclusion, when we look at LNG, methanol, and ammonia, because they are cleaner fuels, we see a lower amount of quality claims, but those claims, whenever they come, will be very big. Whereas instead, when discussing about biofuels, we see a similar amount of claims and also similar type, for the most part, to the current claims that we handle with MFO and MGO. So thank you very much. That's all from me.